and another was 9/11. And I didn't know anything at all about the Middle East. Like most Americans, I assumed what was happening in Israel, Palestine had been going on for thousands of years, and it was about some dusty religious stuff I didn't have any interest in. So go ahead and next. I think you just press the right arrow. There you go. Yeah, so I felt that the whole axis of evil thing and the hate is for our freedom, this was very clearly had the flavor of propaganda, but I had nothing to counter it with. And so, long story short, I just finished a physics degree. I realized I had no interest in academia. I had no interest in going to Wall Street like many of my friends were. And I didn't know what to do, so I decided to just travel to the Middle East. And the point was just to be a tourist, just because I had something besides, because you read articles, you try to even read books, and you have nothing. I had nothing to hang it on. I couldn't. There was no framework of reference to make sense of any of it. So that if I just go meet some people, if I'm a tourist, it's a start. So I started in Cairo, Egypt, and the plan was to go to Istanbul. It was long before the Syrian civil war, and I planned to skip Israel, Palestine. But when I was in the Sinai, I met an Israeli friend who invited me to Israel, and I said, thanks, but no thanks, I'm not going to go there. And then when I was in Amman, Jordan, I met two guys who invited me to go to Palestine, and I was like, well, that's two invitations. Maybe the universe is nudging me in this direction. So next. So I ended up in a village in the West Bank. You see the Kalkilia, kind of in the northwest corner. A village close to there called Jayus. Go ahead, next. And I was going to stay for maybe 3 days. I ended up staying for 5 weeks. And the first chapters 2 and 3 of the book are kind of about that, those 5 weeks, which I'll get up to that in a little while, but I was just so shocked to find so much warmth and so much welcoming and so much fun and doing olive harvest and drinking sweet tea on the porch, which is something Okies know about. So it was just completely opposite world from everything I'd been told. Because I really couldn't picture anything other than, women on a mound of rubble screaming and shaking their fists. That's all we get in the media. So, after those 5 weeks, I needed to leave, I needed to catch my plane home, but all I could think about was going back, and I ended up going back to Ramallah, which is, it's kind of the de facto capital of the West Bank, since Israel occupies all of Jerusalem. And it's a beautiful city. Next. You can just kind of flip through these a little bit. Yeah, next, yeah. Yeah, just keep going. This is one of the churches. Next. Yeah, this is the French Cultural Center. They had concerts and stuff. Next. Click play over here. Yeah, next. This is the Ramallah Cultural Palace, where they're having an improv show. Next. This is Snowbud, which is perfect, thank you. An outdoor venue for drinks, and there's a pool and stuff. They did a movie shoot there one time for a movie called Pomegranates and Myrrh that I was an extra. This is Sangria, which is one of my favorite places to hang out. They have an outdoor beer garden. Next. Next. Fruity cocktail. This is in the central square of Ramallah. Zidiab, another cafe where I spent a lot of time. bunch of shots from around Palestine. This is Taibeh beer. Palestine has a beer made in a village called Taibeh. Drink Palestinian, taste the revolution. Next. This is a village where they make the beer. Next. And they have an Oktoberfest. And this is a band from Jerusalem called Culture Shock that came to give a concert in Taipei. Suleiman Harb. We got some, yeah, next. This is Ramallah Street Hockey. We actually won first place one year, Ramallah team. Yeah. Osama's Pizza. This is, I joked when I got there, I'm like, I found him. Anyway, that's kind of an old joke now. Pronto, this is like an Italian place where I spent many happy afternoons. And Darna is like the fancy restaurant in town. If Kofi Annan came, we'd go to Darna. And the Palestinian Circus School, founded by local acrobats. Next. Tormos is a little seed that they would sell on the side of Main Street. Just a dress shop and a lingerie shop. I was honestly a bit surprised to see this the first time I went to Ramallah, but this is the mall. I live close to there. And Ramallah Football Club, we played next to a church, and like if there were places where sometimes goat herds would come through while we were playing, and we'd say stop the game, goat interference. And at the church there'd be like nuns passing by. We'd have to stop the game and let the nuns pass by. Local initiative. This is Fatia al-Barouthi, the first elected female mayor in Palestine. So, they've done a lot. There's a lot of people working on advancing women's rights and women's empowerment. And that's one example. This is Birzeit University, like the Harvard of Palestine. This is the town of Nablus. There's a Samaritan village where people pray in Hebrew, but they're Palestinians. The Church of Jacob's Well in Nablus. A window in one of the hotels in Nablus. And one of the most beautiful places I've been is called Badan Village, close to Nablus, where they channeled a natural spring into a bunch of waterfalls that just fall all around you as you drink your tea. I think I've participated in 6 olive harvests, just some of the best times of my life. I write a lot about that in the book. And I think in the next picture, I told the kids to say cheese, and the little one said these, which is a bad word in Arabic. Everywhere you go in Palestine, it's like a warm blanket of welcome and warm, I don't know, you can't go anywhere without being offered food. This is Jayus. You can see the fence along the bottom. I'll talk more about that later, in the village on top of the hill, and some of their olive trees. Some of my friends. And this is the fence, the wall that Israel built is a fence like this in rural areas. So it says, mortal danger, military zone. Anyone who approaches the fence endangers his life. So there's the fence, there's the 2, leave it here for a minute, if you can. 2 access roads on either side of it, and then trenches, and then huge piles of razor wire. So it's not like, when people try to say it's a fence, it's like, it's kind of a fence complex, and you get shot if you approach it. And it's got motion sensors and sometimes cameras. And can you go back to? So yeah, and there are gates in the fence, but they're often at extremely inconvenient places, and they're often open at very inconvenient times. And you need a permit from Israel to cross the fence, even if you're going onto your own land that you've owned for generations. So next. And so you can see the fence here. It isolates everything. On this side of the fence is 75% of JUS's land, all of its water resources, most of its greenhouses, just isolated from the villagers. And they're given fewer and fewer permits as time goes on, and given a harder and harder time. And it's hard to get a permit to go, like, for example, to prune the trees as opposed to the harvest. So they're not getting the yields that they could get otherwise. They're not able to sort of relax and have picnics on their own land, and so on. Next. And yeah, here's a, it's a little bit confusing, but this is JU's, and this is the fence, isolating most of its land. And the dark blue blob is a settlement that's already been built, and the sort of blue outline blob is the one that they're building now. And they bulldozed 650 olive trees to make that new settlement on JU's land. Next. And so the situation now is actually worse than this because of what's going on. But when I was there were about 500 checkpoints, roadblocks, fences on or like piles of rubble closing off streets completely. That really turns the West Bank into this sort of like just isolated pockets where a lot of travel involves getting a taxi to this pile of rubble, climbing over the pile of rubble, getting another taxi on the other pile on the other side of that pile, and so on. Next. And on the way into Israeli-occupied East Jerusalem, much less actual Israel, it's much harder to get any kind of permit, and the lines can be much longer, and it's very difficult to drive through, and so on. So next. And a lot of children, because of all these checkpoints, either have to wait at these gates to be let through, or because it might cost a lot of money to take 3 taxis to get to their school, they might not be able to go at all, or to the university. So, next. And there's these Orwellian signs everywhere you go, designed for the benefit of the population. Next. And at one point in the book, I couldn't get through the checkpoint in Nablus that the soldier said, "No Americans are allowed today." Just make that up, I'm sure. They can do whatever they want. There's no, they are the law. So I had to hike for 2 hours to get to Nablus. And, it's a beautiful walk, but imagine if you have a medical emergency, or if you're just trying to get to your work or to your university. And dozens of babies have actually been born at checkpoints, and many of the babies have died as a result. Next. So in chapter, I believe, 8 of the book is when the man I ended up working for in Ramallah, Dr. Mustafa Barghouthi, he decided to run for president against Mahmoud Abbas. And I was the only sort of foreigner in his group that wasn't leaving for the Christmas holidays, so I became his foreign press coordinator. And, Israel clearly wanted Mahmoud Abbas to win, and Mahmoud Abbas clearly wanted Mahmoud Abbas to win, and he had a lot of control over, Abbas had control over Palestinian state media, such as it was, and Israel has control over movement. So both of them kind of stymied him at every turn. This is him just trying to, I think, visit the old city of Hebron. They wouldn't let him in. And, you know, it's kind of, I don't want to, spoiler alert, but he ended up getting about 20% of the popular vote. You know, somebody most of you have probably never heard of. Many Palestinians had never heard of him by the time of the vote. So, and he's an ex-communist, atheist. His wife is Christian, and you know, totally for nonviolence. So, I mean, you'd think if the United States or Israel actually cared or actually wanted a Palestinian Mandela, they would support people who are in that vein. But it's the exact opposite. Next. This is what the wall looks like in Jerusalem. Next. 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 One of my best friends, he worked at the Friends School, which is like the most, it's a Quaker school in Ramallah, and the kids made a postcard out of it. Why not? Next. Next. So this is what go back. This is what the wall looks like throughout Jerusalem. So again, the kind of tan blobs are Palestinian areas. The red blobs are illegal Israeli settlements. And the red thing is the wall, just kind of meandering around, stealing as much land and resources as possible. And you see this is Bethlehem down here. So the idea of these sister holy cities are totally cut off from each other. Next. And probably many of you have seen the clip of this man saying, if I don't steal your land, or if I don't steal your home, somebody else will. And she's like, no, Yami, nobody can steal my home. But ethnic cleansing has been ongoing in Jerusalem for many, many years. Next. And yeah, this is what the three wise men would have encountered if they tried to visit Bethlehem. Next. So Kalkilia is the city closest to Chayus, where a wall completely encircles the entire town. Next. 40,000 Palestinians in a cage, basically here. Next. Just a wall with sniper towers, isolating them from, next. And that's an Israeli highway, just going past it. Next. And so this is a map of the wall in general, like all of its different phases, and then the sort of light blue lines are Israeli bypass roads that Palestinians aren't allowed to use. The entire Jordan Valley, the part on the eastern side that is sort of has the lines through it, totally off limits to Palestinians. When my parents came for a visit, we went to visit the Dead Sea, and I forgot, like an idiot, that I was in a car with Palestinian plates, and soldiers turned us back. My parents weren't allowed to visit. Next. And this is an example of what settlements look like. This is Psagot settlement, close to, on the hill is the settlement, and then just below it is Ramallah. Next. Elon Morley settlement above Nablus. Next. I actually visited Elon Morley with a friend, claiming to be Christian Zionist, just to see, what he would say. And you read about it in the book. He said a lot of outrageous stuff. But one of them was like, I said, what should be done with the Arabs? Because you can't say the word Palestinian around a settler. It's like a tell. They know that you're one of them. So he said, they can stay here if they want, if they just don't ask for any special rights and stay in their areas. And I said, oh, so like an Indian reservation? He said, yes, like Indian reservations. Like he was very unabashed about this kind of thing. And they're even more, uncensored now. Even it just sort of gets worse and worse. Next. I could tell so many stories about all these pictures, but another settlement. And this is one of the settlements. But there was a beautiful hilltop between Jerusalem and Bethlehem that people told me stories of like picnics and hikes and all of this, and this is what Israel turned that into. Next. Yeah. Next. And I'm not going to talk too much about Hebron, just for the interest of time, but it's a southern town, and the blue area has been almost completely ethnically cleansed. And, yeah, next slide. And in the old city, there's a few Palestinians who've managed to remain, but they're harassed. They have no economic opportunities. And settlements are built literally on top of them. Next. And they throw garbage and sewage and eggs and who knows what else. I mean, a friend of mine a Jewish friend that happened, was almost hit with it when I was tour guiding him there. Next. So they have to have these chicken wire over them. Next. So this is what Hebron looks like in the non-ethnically cleansed part. Next. And this is the ethnically cleansed part. Next. Just, guys from Brooklyn walking around like they own the place. Next. Patrolled by 2,000 Israeli soldiers to protect these 500 Israeli settlers. This is some of the graffiti you can find in H2. Next. Yeah, this is common typo scene that you would see, just, if girls are trying to get to school and the soldiers feel threatened, so, they'll, I don't know. Next. Settlers are given a very free hand to harass and beat and throw stones at Palestinians. The soldiers either join in or they do nothing. Next. Yeah, you can see these guys wandering the hills all the time, just intimidating. Sometimes they go on actual pogroms through villages, burning cars. They burned people alive before. Next. This is a church that had some price tag graffiti, which the settlers, when the Israeli government does something they don't like, they take it out on the Palestinians. Christian, Muslim, doesn't matter. Next. Next. It's, it's shocking to see all of these, but once you've been there for a while, you start to be less surprised, I guess. Next. Settlers also constantly, both settlers and soldiers, destroy olive trees, all the time. Next. Next. This is, I think, a school that was burned by settlers. Next. Yeah, I'm not going to go into these guys, but there's some really nasty characters in the Israeli parliament right now who openly call themselves fascists. This guy lives in the most extremist settlement near Hebron. Next. This guy was literally arrested on terrorism charges by Israel, and now he's in the war cabinet. Next. My parents had the bad luck to visit Jerusalem on Jerusalem Day, which is when a bunch of mobs of young Zionists, the Palestinians are basically told to vacate the premises so these guys can go and chant death to Arabs through their neighborhoods. Next. All three of these girls were shot by snipers when I was reporting in Palestine, and again, it's in the book. Next. And there was stories about, these were some t-shirts made by Israeli soldier platoons, kind of for fun. So there's this one, and there's another one that said, the smaller it is, the harder it is to hit them, like as if it's a game to shoot children. Next. And so all of the dark blue things are all the illegal settlements, and all the light blue, medium and light blue, is the areas that the settlements and that the Israeli soldiers have full control over. So you can see it's kind of turning the Palestinians into islands, into ghettos basically, and even there, the Israeli soldiers can go in anytime they want, and settlers can pretty much do what they want to. Next. So yeah, this is the story writ large. It's clearly a story of colonialism. This is how things were around 1946. There was a UN partition plan, like, oh, let's give 55% to a new country that, for people who I mean, you can imagine if somebody came to the United States and said, okay, we're going to give 55% of the United States to some people who really need it, how well that would go over. What Israel managed to conquer was 78%, and now it's much more than that, and Gaza has been totally wiped off the map. Next. So, at some point, Israel is going to have to choose two of the three things. A Jewish majority somewhere, all the land, or peace. If they want a Jewish majority and peace, a two-state solution based on international law, which we can talk about why that hasn't happened. Number two, all the land in Jewish rule, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and or genocide, which is clearly the Israeli government's choice. Or all the land in peace, which means a one-state solution. Everybody gets equal rights between the river and the sea. The Israeli government considers that a pipe dream. Next. Yeah, this is a really outdated map. Actually, much more has been destroyed since then. But this is just an idea of how Gaza has been wiped off the map. Next. Yeah, and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank has largely become a subcontractor for Israel's occupation. Israel has basically a veto power of anything they do. Next. And 20 years ago, Israeli Justice Minister Tommy Lapid told American journalist Jeffrey Goldberg they believe there will come a point, the settlers, when it would come time to transfer the Palestinians to Jordan. So these settlers who are in the Israeli war cabinet are committing genocide in Gaza, and they clearly want to do the same thing to the West Bank. Next. These are just some genocidal things the Israeli government has said. Next. Entire nation that's responsible. It's not true, this rhetoric about civilians, not aware, not involved. It's absolutely not true. Next. We're fighting human animals and we act accordingly. Next. Every school, every mosque, every site, this is one of the Israeli spokespeople. Every school, every mosque, every second house has an access to tunnel. And the interviewer said, but that's an argument for destroying the whole of Gaza, every single building. And she said, do you have another solution? So she's openly admitting, yeah, we're going to destroy everything. Next. Now this is also widely out of date. This is when only about 12,000 people had been killed. That line goes freaking to Claremore by now. But yeah, the purple are the Israeli fatalities in the past 15 years or so. And the orange, especially, like at 2008, 2009, 2014, it was just massacres. It was blood running in the street. And now it's just unspeakable. Next. So if you look at actual data, if you talk to actual Palestinians, the vast majority want nothing more than to live in peace. They don't want to drive anyone out. They just want to live in dignity and peace on their own homeland. Next. And it drives me crazy, it drives a lot of people crazy when people say, why haven't Palestinians tried nonviolent resistance? It's like they are. It's been decades of nonviolent resistance in many, many different forms. The most prominent of which I would say is the BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement, which is calling for an end to the occupation, dismantle the wall, full equality within Israel for Palestinian Israelis, and respect the rights of refugees. What that's going to look like is not clear, but it's got to be dealt with. You can't brush that under the rug forever. Next. Just some pictures from nonviolent protests that I went to in Palestine. Next. And how does Israel respond to nonviolent resistance? Violence, detentions. They will kidnap the children of people who organize the demonstrations or whatever in the middle of the night to intimidate them. They withhold tax revenues from the Palestinian Authority when the Palestinian Authority does anything they don't like, as far as with the ICJ or something like that. The ships that came to Gaza, they've been brutally raided, many people killed. Passing anti-BDS legislation in the United States via the Israel lobby. Next. And they call demonstrations popular terrorism. They call the ICC in The Hague legal terrorism. They call the United Nations diplomatic terrorism. They call sanctions economic terrorism. It's like they define anything they don't like as terrorism, so there's really no room to maneuver. And they act accordingly, by the way. Next. So this is, again, outdated, it only goes to 2006, but this is, about 40 different UN resolutions sort of targeting Israeli violations. All of them vetoed. The one is the United States vetoing every single one of them. Next. Yeah, the short answer is because the Israel lobby is extremely powerful in the United States. I mean, there's other reasons too, but just Walton Mearsheimer wrote a book called The Israel Lobby in U.S. Foreign Policy, and they have videos on YouTube. It's well worth looking into. Next. So what can we do in the face of all this? I have QR code things over here with call to action, and it goes to a page on my website. But getting informed is a great step. Visit Palestine if you can. Maybe not right now, unfortunately. Inform others. As Amira said, the Kindle version of my book is free for the next 5 days. I got the rights back from my publisher, so I could give it away as often as I could. And it's also free on my website as a PDF. So feel free to spread that far and wide. Look up the BDS campaign and find out the ways that you can support that and buy Palestinian olive oil and whatnot. And support local initiatives like ranked choice voting, campaign finance reform. Anything that makes us more democratic is going to help diffuse the power of special interest lobbies. Next. So yeah, this is the same QR code as on the handout, but yeah, that's my talk, and I'm happy to take any questions.
That slide you went back to for the times, was that really 15 minutes a shot to go through those gates?
That's what the sign said. Wow. Sometimes, I went through the gate sometimes. There was another gate that I went through that didn't have the time, so you actually never know when it was going to open. Sometimes you just sit there for 2 hours and wait for somebody to come. So it almost would be better to have, to have time. Not that they would necessarily even honor the time. They could just be messing with people. So, yeah.
You said that you were working with the Palestinian Authority to get their president, or with Mahmoud Abbas, or Mustafa. What time period was that?
So my book takes place.
You couldn't hear the question. Repeat the question.
Sorry, he asked what's the time period when my boss was running for president. So that was 2005.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
I was wondering about the recent because Palestinian Authority wanted to Hamas, even on that. It was slide that they were too much to win. It's by Wikipedia.
Are you talking about the Hamas elections in 2006? Or the elections?
No, 2021.
Oh.
And they separated it. They had to separate it because there was some war.
Yeah.
But they ended up, Hamas didn't get the majority of the vote. That's why I was wondering if they don't list that.
Yeah, Hamas.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Hamas didn't even win in a majority of the vote in 2006. They won a plurality. It was sort of 45 to 41.
Right. Yeah, because there's so many splits.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Palestinian Authority had 33%, and Hamas had 33%. But when they counted down, Palestinian Authority won over that. But then you had 33%. That was another.
Yeah, something like that. Fateh was really foolish and split the vote in a lot of places. So, yeah. Yeah.
The locations early in your presentation, I guess Ramallah and Nablus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they still standing or are they under attack now?
Ramallah and Nablus are in the West Bank. So the cities most attacked in the West Bank right now are Jenin and Tulkarem. And actually my friend Rania from the book is in Tulkarem. And she tells me stories every day of either close encounters with soldiers, or she had to take her little girl to the hospital and the soldiers surrounded the hospital. She lost a friend when Israel bombed a cafe, a friend and her son, and killed more than a dozen people, including her friend and her son, or her friend's son. Her son is a teenager, and he's lost lots and lots of friends to the violence.
Cafe, was that the recent cafe?
Yeah, the recent cafe bomb.
Yeah, they said Israel said there was a Hamas there, or Israel said there was a Hamas there.
They always
Hamas
do.
didn't even know this guy.
Yeah.
They usually say, yeah, we know him, but they didn't even know this guy.
Yeah.
So I don't have a cordless microphone, sorry, ragtag group of people, sorry. So if you have a question, maybe just stand up and try to project. She'll try to re-say what we can, but I'm sorry. This is my own personal equipment, so no cordless mic, sorry.
Yeah.
So for like people who are just learning about what's going on in Palestine, what's something that you recommend for people to do just to start to get in their education?
I mean, that's honestly what I wrote the book for. And like I say, it's free as a PDF. And so, I mean, I wrote it to be a good place to start because it really starts at zero. And it really kind of builds a world a little bit and makes people wonder, like, what the hell is going on there? And then sort of little by little through the book, I try to explain exactly what, actually what's going on. And my website also has, and if you do the QR code, my website has different resources like a brief history of the conflict, articles about the current conflict, sort of the top articles and videos, Gaza frequently asked questions to debunk a lot of the talking points, and so on. So, Plus 972 magazine is it's a joint Israeli-Palestinian online news source that is really, really fantastic, and I haven't found them being jingoistic on either side. Like they're very sort of like both sides are human, and this, they're very much anti-occupation, but they're not demonizing or dehumanizing anyone or lying about things. Like they're pretty straightforward. So I recommend that as a source for sure.
Can you say that again? 972?
Yeah, it's called Plus 972. That's the country code magazine. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, what was that word you used? Jingoistic?
Jingoistic, yeah, like
What
yeah,
does that stand for?
propagandistic, or like a rah our side, rah our side. It's not like that. It's like this is what's really going on.
Like extreme nationalism? Is that
Yeah,
kind of what I mean?
for example, yeah, it's a good example. So it's not like that. Kind of puts humans first, which is nice, refreshing. Yeah.
You said that you were really connected with them in 2005. Are you still connected? Have a strong connection to Palestine currently?
Yeah. I mean, I have friends there. I worked on a book about Gaza with a Gaza journalist whose book's going to come out in December. I'll be, spreading the word about that as soon as it comes out. Dr. Mustafa and his wife Rita and I are still friends, and like my friend Arnie told him. A lot of my friends have gotten out, but their friends and family are still in the middle of it. Many of them. So
So you still talk to Mustafa?
I talked to his wife.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw you had a slide kind of touching on this, but what do you say currently to people who bring up the two-state solution? Because I know that's a common talking point for the U.S. government. I know a lot of people who are Palestinian or have been to Palestine or involved in this realm know that that's kind of obsolete, especially under this Israeli administration. So I'm just curious what your response would be to someone who asks your opinion about the two-state solution.
Sure. So the slide was kind of theoretical. It's like if a two-state solution were possible, this would be. But yeah, it's pretty clear that Israel is completely. I mean, if it wasn't destroyed before, it's completely demolished now. So a lot of people are coming more and more to the conclusion that there's no solution other than a one-state solution, equal rights for everybody. And as I said, the current Israeli government refuses that even harder than they refuse the two-state solution. I mean, they really offer no option other than apartheid, ethnic cleansing, or genocide. So, you know, that's why the BDS campaign, I think, is structured like it is. It's like, it's not clear what it's going to look like, but we got to obey international law here. In the apartheid, tear down the wall,
Explain BDS,
etc.
like what it stands for, what it is.
Yeah, so it's a boycott, divestment, and sanctions initiative that was started in 2005 when I was on the West Bank. I talk about it in the book, where essentially we don't buy products from Israel. We don't invest in companies that profit from the occupation, and we sanction the Israeli government. I mean, different, you know. For example, the U.S. has a law that it's not supposed to sell weapons or give weapons to regimes that commit human rights violations. So all they have to do is follow their own law, but they refuse to do it. They keep pretending it's not happening and doing these dodges and whatever, but it's very clear it's happening. They're breaking their own law. So that would be the kind of sanction that, you know, would be supported by the movement. And it's a unified call from all sectors of Palestinian society, you know, just totally broad, hundreds of community organizations, and yeah, they all made this unified call. And of course, what did the Israel lobby do? It says, oh, this is, they're just delegitimizing the Jewish state because they're anti-Semitic, and it's lawfare, and it's economic warfare, and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, in some cases this has been successful. They've actually tried to criminalize boycotting Israel in several states in the United States, which is bonkers. Like, who would even imagine that? But yeah, but the fact that they fight it so hard, they spend millions of dollars fighting it, indicates it could have an impact if we keep going. Yeah.
If there was a one-state solution, do you think the Palestinians should have a turn running the country, or do you think it should still be under Jewish rule or Israeli rule?
Well, I would think a one-state solution should not be, like, it should be democratic rule. So it's not like one side gets all the power. It's like maybe a shared democracy. That's the idea as far as I understand it. Yeah.
Also, on the government side, did you ever get to work with the governor of Jerusalem?
No, I never did.
Because they usually just keep you in prison, as far as one knows.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. If a politician wins an election and they don't like him, Israel just puts him in jail.
And then, yeah, it's not for violence, it's just because they want to vote.
Yeah, and actually, Dr. Mustafa, he was arrested a couple times during the campaign on just bogus stuff. And I asked him at one point, I'm like, are you afraid you'll get arrested and prevented from running? And he's like, I will run from jail. Like, he just knows that's part of the calculus, you know? So, yeah.
What does the U.S. have to gain by supporting this?
That's a very good question.
Can you restate the question?
Yeah, he said, what does the U.S. have to gain by supporting Israel? I was just listening to a talk by John Mearsheimer, who, along with Stephen Walt, wrote the Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy. He essentially says we have nothing to gain. It's just the lobby has its own, it's kind of like the gun lobby or the weapons lobby. It's not necessarily about helping in the United States. A lot of these wealthy special interests are just helping themselves. They just kind of become their own like monster that sort of steers things to their own ends, and they keep getting money for donations, and then they keep sending money to these people, and it's this revolving door of like DC, and it's just become like conventional wisdom that, and there's like lots of think tanks as well, like the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, that churn out this sort of conventional wisdom of course we support Israel, and here are the reasons, even though they don't make any sense, and so on and so forth. So, but after I left Palestine, I worked at a think tank in DC, a Defense Department think tank funded by Congress. Thinking, oh, it's a nonpartisan think tank, maybe they'll actually be open to, a different perspective, or somebody who's actually been on the ground, who actually sees, Arabs and Muslims as human beings, and sort of more complex than sort of whatever. There was no interest at all. I gave a talk very similar to this one time, and to just a few colleagues. And they were all like, wow, that was amazing. Like, you should give it again. And all my other colleagues were like, hey, I heard your talk was great. And so I like got a bigger room, I got some food, I was ready to get that to going. And then I got an email from my supervisor who's like, actually, you can't give the talk again. It's divisive and it might spark a debate. And
No, darn.
I was like, okay, I mean, if you want an Israeli to speak to or a Zionist to speak to, that's fine. Like, it's called What the World Looks Like from the West Bank and Gaza. It's just not meant to be comprehensive. Like, bring whoever you want. And if we can't have a debate at a think tank, where are we supposed to have this debate? And they never responded. And I was too beaten down at that point to, you know, to fight it. Because they just weren't interested. I ended up just quitting because it was totally futile. Yeah.
What year was that?
That was 2006, 2007. The Bush administration. But believe me, it didn't get better under the Obama administration. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought that the only way the genocide is going to end is if the United States compels our government to stop it. So this is a general question to the group as well as to you, Pamela. Thank you very much for this. What can we do? How do we organize politically in this country to ensure that our government stops funding this freaking genocide that's been going on for 75 years for sure in the last year? How do we do that? And we can start maybe by having our, you know, the boycott legislation at the state level repealed, for example. Not to leave it at that. The question, generally.
Yeah, no, I mean, millions of people are wondering the same thing, and millions of people are trying millions of things. And, you know, I wrote this book as you know, one of my contributions, because one thing I realized is, much like myself before I went to Palestine, people don't have anything to, even if they get new information, they have nothing to hang it on. So it just kind of like bounces off. They're like, well, but they have this other framework already in place of like Israel is the good guys, and, you know, the Leon Uris book, you know, Exodus, and so it just doesn't make any sense. And they don't really see Palestinians as humans because they've never seen them portrayed as humans. That's why I decided to write the book. And I left Washington. I'm like, screw you guys. I don't want to become the devil by dancing with the devil, you know. But it's really, how do you say? The empire is really showing its ass and really rubbing it in our faces right now. And a lot of, like, millions of young people are seeing it in living color, undeniable. And, you know, I don't know what that's going to look like in 10 or 20 years, but, you know, nobody saw the end of apartheid in South Africa coming. Nobody saw the end of the Soviet Union coming. You know, you can think of 1,000 examples. Nobody saw the end of slavery coming. They were just giving up at some point. Like, this institution's here forever. And then the Civil War happened. So it's ugly, it's horrible, and there's no guarantee that there's going to be a happy ending somewhere down the line. But all we can do is try, is do our little parts, because there are undercurrents that don't necessarily get taken into account until it's too late. And also, Georges Monbiot is a thinker who, you know, talks about, global imperialism and different things. And he says preaching to the choir actually is quite important, because somebody who is not involved gets interested. Somebody who's interested gets involved. Somebody who's involved gets passionate. Somebody who's passionate does the next thing. And so events like these, I think, I mean, I'm happy to do as many as people will have me. So, I mean, that's my answer. Among others, I've also, you know, sent a lot of funds to people to help them stay alive through this. In the call to action, there's 2 petitions to sign. One of them is for Bernie Sanders is sponsoring some legislation to investigate the Israel's war crimes, and also legislation to end this, to cancel this next $20 billion shipment of aid to Israel. So that's 2 things. I have some, you know, some wonderful organizations that help Palestinians through this, including one who They send eSIMs, which are basically electronic cell phone, credits, so people can stay in contact with the world. That's one of the ways Gazans are able to get anything out when no journalists are allowed in. So, there's many things we can do, but people with a whole lot more clout and influence than anybody in this room are just as much at a loss as we are. So you're not alone. Yeah.
Do you have the contact information for those organizations so we can help support them?
Yeah, the QR code goes to, exactly, to those. And it's also on this little quarter sheet. Yeah.
What does a one-state solution practically look like? Because the way I see it, like, if you have one state, you're essentially asking Palestinians to coexist with people who think they're animals. Like, you have millions of settlers who think they're animals and have like this racist, basically Nazi ideology. So how is a one-state solution just in and of itself sufficient?
That's a great question. I would say it's certainly not sufficient. An enormous amount of reparations are owed. For one example, truth and reconciliation committees will probably have to take place. Generational change will have to happen. We live in the American South right now, where Black people were enslaved. So how do they live together? It's not perfect by any means, but it's better than it was. And same thing in South Africa, or Jewish people live in Berlin. Jewish people live in Germany right now. So things can change with, although now the Germans tend to be racist toward Arabs. So, what other options do you think there might be?
The U.S. stays out of it unless they decide for themselves how they want to be governed. I think the problem with the U.S. is that we get involved in everybody else's business. And while I'm talking, I'm going to ask you a question about a slide you had up. So you mentioned seeing Americans, some dudes from Brooklyn, controlling streets and wearing T-shirts, bragging about the number of murders they committed. And could you give some context to this and the idea that Americans can go to other places and commit crimes that, in theory, they can get away with here?
Yeah, sure. So Israel has a law where any Jewish person anywhere in the world can come to Israel and get automatic citizenship. And it's a little bit loose who qualifies as a Jewish person, but they want as many bodies on the ground as possible to counter the demographic threat of non-Jews in what they consider a Jewish state. So it's essentially an ethnocracy. And so about 20% of Israel, we call it Palestine 48, the parts of Israel that are not the West Bank and Gaza. Within that, there are Palestinian citizens. They're kind of the people who Israel did not manage to ethnically cleanse in 1948. Zionist apologists like to say, that proves that, Israel is benevolent. It's a democracy. There's even an Arab in the courts, whatever. You talk to actual Palestinian Israelis, and you actually spend time with Palestinian Israelis. The racism is palpable, and they have sort of bylaws in their neighborhoods where it's very simple to exclude non-Jews from your neighborhood by saying it's like a cultural difference or whatever. So it's basically redlining, legalized redlining. Obviously, Palestinian schools are not funded anywhere close to Jewish schools.
These ideas of a certain class or a group of folks being having some sort of supremacy.
I didn't quite hear you.
Oh, I was just asking if rather commenting, it seems like it's a system of supremacy whereby one class or group of folks are considered.
Yeah, it's clearly a system of supremacy, and that's among Palestinian Israelis. Occupied Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza cannot even vote in Israel at all. They're ruled by Israel. Israel has veto power over their lives, but they don't vote. So it's like 5 million Palestinians are living without citizenship. without any political rights, any human rights, and without freedom. Israel controls their currency, their travel, their residency, their airspace, their territorial waters, their drinking water, their electricity. Like, I could go on, but imagine if, and so they're shut into these ghettos that are shrinking every year. And for example, in the Gaza Strip before October 7th, there was catastrophic unemployment among young people. So you have these promising people who studied software engineering, sitting in their childhood rooms, drinking their parents' tea because they can't get a job. There's no job and they can't leave because maybe there's nowhere to go, or maybe Israel won't let them. And so it was, they talked about just kind of not really living, just existing in a lot of cases. And of course, anytime they did resist that state of affairs, even if it was symbolically, they were brutally repressed. For example, they had a lot of demonstrations at the wall in Israel. They kind of made a sport of shooting their knees and ankles because these are extremely difficult injuries to recover from. And in 2008, 2009, and 2014, like I said, there were huge numbers of Palestinians bombed to death. Yeah.
Just to piggyback off my original question and then his question about the one-state solution, why is it that in your opinion, you believe that there should be a mix between the Jewish and Palestinian reign when it's a one-state solution? Why can it not just be the Palestinians, ruling? Because before, the 1948, Palestinians were ruling the entire, country, and there was never any issues. So it goes back to what you pointed out that, these people believe that Palestinians are, animalistic and that we're lesser than. So do you honestly believe that they will ever allow Palestinians to have any sort of say? If you combine us with them, I don't think it will ever happen to be that way. I just feel like it'll just, maybe they'll give us a lesser powerful role, or something like something lesser than it will never be equated. And so I guess what I'm asking is not really a question. I'm just saying, as a Palestinian, I think that we need to continue having Israelis reign any longer, because they had an opportunity, and this is what they have done with it. It's not like they have any sort of feelings towards us. They have no, they have no sort of regard towards us. I don't know if I made my point clear, but as a Palestinian, I think it's time for Palestine to be Palestinian rule again.
That's totally understandable. As for me, as an American, it's like, what we need to do is stop funding Israel. And what happens next, in a sense, it's the world's business because the world has contributed to the slaughter and the oppression. But, it's not our business to tell Palestinians what to do, for example. So, yeah.
I have a question. Have you faced any backlash by writing this book and doing the work that you do? And if so, how do you deal with that?
You asked about backlash.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Surprisingly, not as much as I expected. There've been. When I gave a talk at the Barnes and Noble in the Upper West Side in Manhattan, there were some contentious questions. But even there, kind of the police, stepped in and kind of put, took the people out, and it went on without a hitch. So it's almost, how do you say, when you hit it big enough, then you get a bigger backlash, and so I'm kind of waiting for it, But so far, I haven't.
Backlash from who? Like racist?
I get a ton of people on Facebook,
I'm just saying, backlash like that might not be a it might be an indicator that you're on the right track.
I agree, but just to clarify, I was saying it's become normalized if in this society you speak about Palestine, you're automatically labeled as anti-Semitic or un-American or a number of things. So just to clarify, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not Ta-Nehisi Coates yet. If I get to that stage, I'll know I've made it. Yeah.
So do Palestinians in Palestine, do they want a one-state solution?
So
Most,
he's asking me if Palestinians in Palestine want a one-state solution.
Yes, we do. I mean,
most of the ones I talk to, like, is why not? Why shouldn't they be able to travel freely anywhere in historic Palestine they want to? Why shouldn't they be able to marry somebody and bring them in and everything else? So yeah.
as a Palestinian, I don't even jump into this, but as a Palestinian, people are just now learning about what's going on in Palestine, Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to call it. But we forget that Palestine was always a place for everybody. It was for Jews, it was for Christians, it was for Muslims, it was for, they even have, the Armenian people there, the Greek people there, there's all walks of life there. So,
Samaritans.
yeah, it's for everybody. It's not just for one, it's like America pretty much. But what happened is that these people wanted to go to another place, declare it as their own, and take over, and that's not okay. It's just not okay. It's not going to continue that way. Who knows, but that's just my opinion. So we want a one-state solution where we can live freely amongst everyone else, have all the same equal rights amongst everyone else, and the Jews can be there, whoever wants to be there can be there. But it's just why do we have to be lesser than? Why do we have to live under fear and occupation and have our homes bulldozed, and our olive trees ripped apart, and our children don't have freedoms, and our wives have to be afraid? It's not a way to live life. And it cannot continue on. Sorry to jump in, but
No, it's fine. There's two other groups of Palestinians I didn't know about until I went there. Circassian Palestinians who speak Russian, and African Palestinians who came maybe through the Hajj and then stayed over the centuries. So, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on voting independent? Because right now it seems like both parties are for genocide. Right.
Yeah. Sure. She said, "What do you think about voting independent when both major parties are pro-genocide?" What I have to say is I feel very lucky that I live in Oklahoma, where my vote for president doesn't matter that much. Because no matter what I say, somebody's gonna get mad at me right now. And to be very honest, and this is probably gonna make them the most mad, I'm kind of agnostic. I don't really know what the answer is. I don't know what I'm gonna do, to be very honest. I think focusing on local elections is important because the top of the ticket, even if Jill Stein was president, she wouldn't be able to stop the entire military-industrial complex by herself. But the more people who are in Congress or in Tulsa mayor or, because there are Palestinians in Tulsa, obviously some here, but it matters who's representing us in Tulsa. It matters who's representing us in the State House, because that's where the anti-BDS legislation goes. So I think it's really important to focus on that. Really important to focus on electoral reforms, like I said, campaign finance reform and ranked choice voting. So yeah, that's maybe not the most satisfactory answer, but that's what I got. Yeah.
I'm a Native American from here, and my people originally were from Fulton, Alabama. We got the claims here. So this is very familiar to us. When you're trying to convince us that there's a good genocide going on, we know it is. And part of the problem that I see is that we don't think deeply enough about what's the real source of all of this. And what I've come up with in my research is that it's our values. Because I was inspired by a statement by Martin Luther King, one of his speeches. He said, "We as a nation must undergo a radical revolution of values." And to me, that made it very clear. First we got to decolonize our thinking, every one of us. Because we were all raised, including myself, with capitalist values of individualism, of lack of respect for the earth, instead of cooperating, we're fighting with each other, trying to get as much as we can for ourselves. Those values are deep, and they come from Europe, and they were, unfortunately, a lot of the Jews came from Europe also, and they absorbed some of those same values. And I'm not saying that they didn't suffer tremendously under, the Germans, but what has to happen is that they have to also undergo a radical revolution of values. Yes. But that's not going to happen easily. I'm afraid that
two scenarios which are not good. One is a civil war, which is entirely possible. It's starting to happen right here in the United States. And the other is that all the other airstrips, nations finally decide, we gotta stamp out this plans. And they all come together, including the Turk, that has a huge air force, a huge army. They're not gonna win against Turkey. Even though I don't like Turkey. I don't like the leaders, certainly. But there are ways that people can get together. You know, you have to think, why is it that less than 1% of the population of this country can dominate and control the other 350 million people here?
Yes.
It's our values, our individualistic values. That keeps them getting together. That keeps them helping each other, trusting each other, caring for each other, loving each other. These are indigenous values that were crushed by the colonization of our people suffered. But we managed to retain some of it. And I take this seminar on values around the country myself, but I get a tremendously good response because it makes a whole lot of sense that the values that we've got through capitalism, they're psychotic. And they're going to destroy everything unless we cleanse our minds of those values and start looking for better values.
But that's what the American government wants from us. They want us to be separated, they want us to be self-absorbed, they want us to be on our phones, worrying about this and that, and they want us to forget things that really matter.
I know that.
That's,
It's all clear. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it's possible to change those values. But you have to start by cleansing your own head from those kind of values.
Right. It's hard, but we can do it.
Yes.
I don't want to silver lining at genocide, but it really has brought the world into a new consciousness. Like millions and millions of people who've never paid attention before, and I see it all the time, are really waking up and really realizing like something has gone horribly wrong. And so that evolution of values that you speak about, I think that's desperately needed for sure. The question of how to do that, I mean, I think, everything is a start. Every act is a particle of that tsunami. So.
Think local.
What's that?
You said it on thinking local. Local
Yeah.
elections.
Yeah.
Real from yourself.
Yeah. Community. Yeah.
Just to piggyback on what you're saying, and I overcapitalized, to any degree in every industry, we've got Citizens United, who is just, made it all worse, and campaign finance, so, everything is monetized. Just, like you were saying, but I'm gonna say something that's probably not very popular about voting, and I'm gonna say it. We do have two candidates that are at the top here. And they're not perfect, but one is incredibly imperfect and who is talking about poisoning the blood. He's talking about more than just Palestinians. He's talking about all kinds of ethnic cleansing. And he's talking about taking legal immigrants and deporting them. He's talking about, all kinds of colors of people that are not white like him. So they're the lesser of two. I know that there are problems with both and with Biden. I know that. We don't have to agree with both, but we've got to pan out and look. This one is going to be catastrophic for us. He is not going to listen to what any of this group has to say.
Maybe as a nation, maybe as a nation, we have, at some point consequences have to be born. I don't want Trump either, don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is that it might be beyond that, because I can't tell anyone here or Michigan to vote for Trump. There's consequences. What does that mean? For Gaza, it's not going to be any worse. For us, it will. And it seems, for me at least, I reckon that, and I don't know. At some point, if you drink too much, you will get cirrhosis of the liver. If we continue to do this, if we continue to fund this genocide and support this genocide slaughter, the way we are, letting Kamala get away with it and say, well, she's not Trump. Damn, I don't know. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, damn, man, maybe we earned it as a nation. This is how we go down with this Trump guy.
It doesn't make me happy to say it either.
I agree.
It's horrible.
I'm not against you, I'm with you, but I'm just saying this is where we're at.
It's like a choice of fish, you know, we have just one choice and it's not good.
But it seems like with Biden and I'm someone that, you know, gets my news, you know, I pick and choose where I get my news from, right? So,
Right.
but it seems like with Biden, they're just getting away with everything, right? He's just giving.
No check.
Are you sure? I mean, like, we have to think sometimes, right? Or all the time, but like, we have to think. If we go with Kamala, is it gonna be any better? Is she gonna hold back some? Like, I don't know. Because she was a VP, so what did she do? What did she do up to this point? She allowed
She's not allowed to do anything. That's not her power. She stated she'll do the rest.
Okay, yeah, so I totally respect everybody. You guys can maybe have this conversation afterwards. But, yeah.
It's fine, definitely talk, but maybe not go large.
So if there's one more on-topic question, I can take it. Yeah, and then we'll wrap up.
The last thing I would ever want to do would be hijack someone else's event, but someone asked about alternative candidates. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Mark Sanders. I'm running for Congress. I'm the independent in the race. I'm the only candidate in that race for Congress who supports a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire, is in favor of an embargo, a U.S. embargo on military aid to Israel. And I've had these positions my entire adult life. So all I would ask you to do is, when you're investigating your candidates, there is a candidate in the race that is supportive of the things that have been stated tonight. It happens to be me. I'll shut up now. You can go to my website.
I consider.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I not hear this? Yes, I'm a great candidate. I'm Mark Sanders. And I have some cards here tonight if people would be interested in information. Thank you.
Yeah, for the record, I consider that on topic. So on that note, thank you everybody so much for.
All right, well, thank you all for coming. Just wanted a few just minor little details again. If you do want to buy the actual hard copy, or actually it's paperback, sorry, of her book, it is available. Fulton Street is selling it. And then Pamela will be over here. She's happy to chat, sign your book. Please get the QR codes. There are postcards in the back if you want to send to your congresspeople. Andrea will be back there. And please, if you didn't give us your email address, please do. Thank you again so much for being here.